What if the collapse of a democracy doesn't look like a sudden coup? Tanks in the streets, a dictator seizing power overnight. What if instead it looks more like a slow, almost legalistic erosion, driven not by some great villain, but by the small choices ordinary citizens make every single day?
That is the really compelling and frankly uncomfortable premise behind the book we're diving into today. It's Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century.
Right. And Snyder is a highly respected historian. His focus is 20th century Europe, specifically how places like Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia became totalitarian. He wrote this book out of a real concern about patterns he was seeing back in the 2010s.
Things like rising nationalism, a contempt for truth, institutions getting weaker. He saw these things happening in the US and in Europe, and this book was his response. It's a historian's warning about a process. It's not a prediction.
Exactly. And that framework is what we're focused on. So enjoy a bold new take on book coverage with this extended analysis. This is more than the summary, that will include that too.
Yeah, this feature really examines how an author shapes their argument, how they build influence, and how they earn or maybe lose your trust. It gives you the tools to read with a sharper insight.
So should you read this book? This deep dive should help you decide. It's also, I think, excellent for any aspiring writers out there trying to understand effective rhetoric.
And just a quick note as we get started, you're experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation, and it's powered by Google's Notebook LM. The idea is to get a deeper, more dynamic analysis.
Our focus today is really on you, the citizen who feels maybe a little anxious about the political climate, but needs concrete, everyday ways to respond.
Right. Snyder's book is both diagnostic, it names the threat, and it's prescriptive. It gives you tools to fight back without getting completely overwhelmed.
Okay, so let's start with the structure of the book, because it's very unusual. The organization is the first big strategic choice he makes.
It really is. It's a short book, maybe 130 pages, and it's organized as 20 lessons, but they're phrased as commands.
Things like, do not obey in advance, defend institutions, be kind to our language. They're very direct.
And that genre choice is so important. He's borrowing from self-help, from handbooks, not from dense academic history. It's meant to be used, a civic manual you can reference quickly.
It's definitely designed for the coffee table, not the university archive.
Yeah.
It's so accessible. But I do wonder, does that brevity, does it sacrifice some of the intellectual weight you need to tackle a threat this big?
That is the central trade-off. But I think the structure itself is part of the argument. By giving you 20 lessons, he's showing that maintaining a democracy isn't about one single heroic act.
It's a bundle of habits.
Exactly. A whole bundle of consistent, almost mundane habits. You have to do all 20 things all the time. The format reinforces that resistance is cumulative.
And there's a clear arc to it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a random list.
Not at all. It's a deliberate rhetorical arc. It starts internally with your own mind. Lesson number 1 is do not obey in advance. That's a purely psychological choice.
Resisting that urge to conform before you're even asked to.
Right. Then it moves outward to institutions supporting courts, professional ethics, and it ends with the really high-stakes stuff. Courage, potential sacrifice. You start by fixing your own thinking, and you end prepared for public action.
So yes, he sacrifices that deep scholarly dive in any one lesson, but what he gains is this immense rhetorical punch. It's perfect for mobilizing a broad audience and fast.
The book moves so quickly, though, he has to build his authority almost immediately. You have to trust his judgment or none of it works.
Which brings us right to ethos, his credibility. And it's more than just listing his credentials, isn't it? He's creating a kind of moral contract with you, the reader.
He is. And he does it with 3 things that are all woven together: expert knowledge, moral seriousness, and a sense of civic solidarity.
The expert knowledge is obvious. He's constantly drawing on his work on Nazi Germany, Stalinist Russia.
And that grounds the whole thing in evidence. It stops it from feeling like just speculation. It creates what you called it productive unease, not just panic.
But he's also very careful. He insists that history instructs, but it doesn't just repeat itself mechanically. That's a crucial distinction.
It is. It positions him as a careful historian who is translating patterns, not just trying to score cheap political points by saying, this is exactly like 1933. He's analyzing the process.
Okay, and that sets up the logos, the actual logic of his argument. It seems to rely almost entirely on reasoning by analogy. How does that work in practice?
Well, he'll take a pattern from a past authoritarian regime, say, the way they destroyed professional ethics for doctors or lawyers, and he pairs it with a recommendation for today.
So when he gets to lesson number 10, believe in truth, He's not just saying be honest.
No, not at all. He's showing you how Stalinist Russia built an entire public sphere on manufactured lies to control people. So his advice to investigate in the next lesson isn't just about reading the news, it's about resisting that kind of disorientation by doing the hard work of finding facts.
I see. So the logic is cumulative. One lesson like, take responsibility for the face of the world might seem small. Just take down an offensive poster.
Right. But when you put them all together, they show that tyrannies need our consent. They need institutions to be hollowed out and for truth to be destroyed. You realize all these small habits have to be working together for the whole system to survive.
That structural argument is incredibly compelling. And by the way, if you are finding this expanded format valuable, we would love to hear from you. Your feedback really does help guide our future content. This analysis, and many others, can be found on Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel.
Let's pivot to the emotional side of this. The pathos. Snyder is using some of the darkest chapters of history here. The Holocaust, the gulags. How does he do that without just paralyzing you with despair?
It's a masterful balance, I think, between fear and dignity. He evokes the horror, but not with graphic detail. It's more of a sober reminder that, yes, it can happen here. He keeps the stakes clear without being exploitative.
And he uses these incredibly sharp psychological insights. The idea of anticipatory obedience is so important.
That's lesson number 1 again.
Right. The idea that people start conforming to what they imagine a new regime wants before any law is even passed.
That's fascinating. It means the mechanism of tyranny is already running inside your own head before the tyrant even takes full control. It makes you recognize your own vulnerability.
It gives you a personal stake. But then, and this is key, the emotional journey shifts. It moves from that anxiety toward dignity, towards self-respect. Lessons like be a patriot or be as courageous as you can appeal to your desire to be an honorable person.
He reframes ordinary things like defending someone who's being targeted or just insisting on facts as these meaningful moral choices. It's a kind of quiet heroism.
But are those small acts really effective? I mean, does being kind to language or taking down a poster actually stop an institution from collapsing? Or is it just a way to make ourselves feel better?
Snyder argues it's the cause, not just comfort. He looks at how professional ethics eroded in 1930s Germany. The legal profession, the press, they weren't dismantled overnight.
They were hollowed out by thousands of tiny individual compromises, a lawyer using a legal excuse to justify something awful, a journalist just printing propaganda as if it were fact.
So if enough individuals refuse to make those compromises, that hollowing out process slows down. Maybe it even stops. That makes the stakes feel much more immediate.
He also uses some really sticky rhetorical strategies to make it all memorable. The imperative diction, for one.
Yep.
All the chapter titles starting with "Do not defend B," they sound like rules to live by.
And he uses juxtaposition constantly. He'll put a story from the early Nazi Party right next to a modern political slogan. And it forces you to look at our language today through that historical lens.
And of course, he creates these incredibly quotable concepts, the politics of inevitability versus the politics of eternity. Can we break those down?
We should. The politics of inevitability is that comforting, lazy story we tell ourselves in democracies. That history only moves forward, that everything will be fine automatically. He says that belief is a major weakness.
It breeds complacency. And the politics of eternity is the opposite. It's the narrative tyrants use. That the nation is always in crisis, always defending itself from some ancient internal enemy.
And it justifies constant emergency measures. It lets the leader become the one true defender of the nation's soul. Those labels are just incredibly powerful rhetorical tools.
But we should note the limitations. That same brevity that makes it accessible can also limit the nuance. Some critics say he flattens complex structural causes like economic inequality into just a failure of individual character.
And that goes back to the risk. By naming specific threats and drawing analogies to today, he reinforces his own ethical clarity, but he absolutely risks alienating anyone who already sees his framing as partisan. They might just dismiss it as alarmism.
It's the price he's willing to pay for trying to mobilize a mass audience. It's a deliberate choice.
So, when you put it all together, what does it mean for the reader? I think the central finding is that On Tyranny works because it turns this distant, difficult historical scholarship into a practical, urgent guide for right now.
It makes the case that those small individual decisions about your words, your professional ethics, your personal courage, that those are the cumulative forces that will determine the future of democracy.
A powerful synthesis of history and individual agency. So here's a provocative thought for you to apply this week. Since tyranny is so often incremental and legalistic, consider which single institutional norm or professional ethic in your own field, whether you're in law or medicine or just part of your local PTA, which one should you focus on understanding and defending this week?
That's where the real work begins.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Subscribe, share, purchase through the link, and think rationally about what you've heard today.
See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.